Now, first off, before I get started tonight, I kind of want to apologize for being dressed like a gay penalty flag. But I just got back from the gym and I didn't feel like changing before I made this video. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it, and what I'm wearing be damned. Now, one thing we all know as caring adult people is that you never can undersell a tragedy like what happened recently in the Washington, D.C. Naval Yard. Every life has meaning. Whenever a life is lost, it's a tragedy, especially when that life is lost needlessly to wanton violence like has happened here in Washington, D.C. You can't devalue a single life. You have to treat every single one of them with the respect they deserve. Every one of those people was important to someone, and you have to treat those people with honor and respect. Now, sadly, there are people that want nothing more to capitalize on those people's deaths. They want to treat these people not like individuals, but like fodder for their agenda. They are simply stepping stones to get to their own goals. And to me, that's greatly disrespectful, but sadly, it's something that's become very common with a certain group, a certain special interest group, that is the anti-gun interest group in this country today. But this time, we're a couple of days into it, I'm noticing one thing. They seem to be having trouble getting traction with their movement this time. They seem to be having trouble getting their message across and getting people to join their rally cry. Even their own talking heads seem very despondent on the news. They seem to have a very pessimistic attitude, like, oh, well, we couldn't get anything done last time, we're not getting anything done this time, even though we need to. It's just they just don't seem like they feel like they're ever going to win anything. And, that to me is a good sign. But why is it the case this time? Why are they having such a hard time getting traction? I mean, this was a mass killing. There's 12 people dead. So why are they having trouble capitalizing on that like they usually do? Now, don't get me wrong. This is no December. December was heartbreaking. I couldn't even do videos about December. But this is still a tragedy. Like I said, you can't undersell it. It may not be the same as it was in December, but it is still a tragedy, and yet they're still having trouble. Now, one of the reasons they're having trouble is because the media seems to be focusing on something that I think is an actual issue. They're focusing on that breakdown of security protocols. They're focusing on that fact that a guy like this should not have a security clearance. This guy's past alone is enough. This is a guy who reported to local police that he's been hearing voices in his head. And those police actually told base officials. And yet this guy's security credentials weren't pulled. This is a breakdown of security. And this has been a problem for a long time. I used to work security. I used to work in military intelligence, and I can tell you, when we contract out background checks to the contractors themselves, well, they contract it out to a subcontractor, and everyone goes lowest bidder, and by the time you get done, you find out that half the people have never really had a background check done at all. So a lot of people are focusing on that. They're focusing on this, are we putting ourselves at risk simply to save $1? And it's the case. That is just the way it is. So the fact that they're focusing on that means they're not focusing on the gun as much. Another reason is there wasn't an AR used. And that really bugs the anti-gun people because they love it when ARs are used because they know they can parade out this scary-looking black semi-automatic rifle. And people don't understand it. They think it's military use. And, they panic. And they're like, well, why does anybody need that? Well, an AR wasn't used this time, so they don't have their usual rally flag. They don't have their usual scapegoat. So they didn't have an AR involved in this, so they're having to scramble to find out what they can scapegoat. Another thing is he passed a background check. Their last big push was background check, background check, background check. Background checks will make us all safer. Well, he passed a background check. So if you admit that he passed a background check, you kind of have to admit that your whole last agenda was kind of false. Background checks don't stop people like this from doing things like this. People who do things like this, it's usually the first time they've ever went off the deep end. So they don't have a prior history that prevents them from buying a gun with a background check. So background checks are, mildly effective at best, and they definitely don't prevent tragedies like this. They are just not as useful as people like to pretend they are. Now, the final reason that I think they're having trouble is this guy took Joe Biden's advice. Joe Biden said, go buy a shotgun. Uncle Joe was like, go buy a shotgun. This guy went and bought a shotgun. So he took the vice president's advice. And the problem with the fact that he went and bought a shotgun is it's hard to demonize the shotgun. They can demonize military use weapons all the time, but when it comes to the shotgun, the shotgun's as American as, baseball, apple pie, malt liquor, and midget hookers. It is American. It's so American. If you try to attack the shotgun itself, you're going to anger the FUDs. You're going to anger everybody. No one, even Joe Biden, supports the shotgun. So how can you demonize the tool itself if the tool itself is so accepted, if the tool itself is such a part of American life? The answer is you really can't. You can't demonize a shotgun. Because all you do, if you do try to demonize a shotgun, well, then you're just saying, well, you're just going to demonize anything anybody uses. And also by saying, well, this guy couldn't get an assault rifle, couldn't get a pistol, So you got a shotgun. That kind of shows bad people like this will improvise. They'll do what they have to do. If they can't get a rifle, they'll get a pistol. If they can't get a pistol, they'll get a shotgun. If they can't get a shotgun, they'll get a pipe bomb. If they can't get a pipe bomb, they'll learn to make sarin gas. They will make do with what they have. So that just shows the tool isn't the reason for the crime. The AR isn't the reason for the crime. The semi-automatic pistol isn't the reason for the crime. No more than the shotgun is the reason for the crime. You can't demonize the tool. So in the end, the problem with this tragedy for the people who want to capitalize off of it is that it just doesn't tick any of the boxes it needs to tick for them usually to use their emotional appeal. People are actually looking at this in a way and saying, these are things that don't usually happen. These are things that aren't usually the issue. We're looking at things that are real issues like security and the guy himself, because, we don't hate shotguns and we don't hate military bases and we don't hate, any of these things as themselves, in themselves. We have to look at what happened and deal with the actual situation. And when people start thinking with their heads, start thinking logically, and stop using emotion, that's the worst thing that can ever happen for the anti-gun crowd. You ain't even my real dad.